Our scripture for today comes from Exodus 20, verses 1 to 17. I'm reading from the Net Bible, which is an acronym for the New English Translation. Exodus 20, verses 1 to 17. The Ten Commandments. The Net Bible's heading is the Decalogue. God spoke all these words. I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water below. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God, responding to the transgression of fathers by dealing with children to the third and fourth generations of those who reject me, and showing covenant faithfulness to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold guiltless anyone who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. For 6 days you may labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or your cattle, or the resident foreigner who is in your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and set it apart as holy. Honor your father and your mother, that you may live a long time in the land the Lord your God is giving to you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. Focus verses for this morning comes from Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. For 6 days you may labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or your cattle, or the resident foreigner who is in your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea, and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and set it apart as holy. To rest or not to rest? That is the question we want to answer today. Over the years, we have gone from very strict to complete disregard for the Sabbath to total confusion. Today, there are some who believe that we do not have to keep the Sabbath at all and that it is not applicable anymore. Many of those who believe this do not believe that the Ten Commandments are applicable anymore either. Then, on the other side of the coin, we have those who believe that a specific day has to be maintained as the Sabbath, and that anyone who does not adhere to strict laws surrounding the Sabbath will go to hell. So, what is the truth? What did God really mean when He issued this commandment? And is it still applicable today or not? Exodus 20, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy. This is an emphatic commandment from God, a non-negotiable. But what does it mean to remember the Sabbath day? And how should one set it apart as holy? Remembering the Sabbath day relates to observing it. Setting it apart as holy means that you should not treat this day as you would treat any other day of the week. When God commanded the Israelites to be holy because He is holy, He simply said to them, "You have to be set apart or different from the rest of the nations around you because I am set apart or different from all the other gods that you knew in Egypt and all the other gods the nations around you serve." The same applies to the Sabbath day. In Moses' day, this would have been completely countercultural, for in the ancient Near East, there was no such thing as a day of rest. People worked hard every single day of the week. The Sabbath was something which the Israelites or Hebrews initiated due to this commandment from God. This would then spill over into the Jewish nation and later into Christian traditions. When Christianity took over almost the entire civilized world more than a millennia and a half ago, things such as the Sabbath became part of our normal lives. Therefore, most people around the world have what we call weekends these days. Some people still work on Saturdays. Some people even work on Sundays. But most people take a day of the week off so that they may rest. Whether they actually do rest is completely up to them, though. So, on which day should we celebrate the Sabbath? Saturday or Sunday? Well, initially the Sabbath was from Friday evening until Saturday evening. So it was not a specific day, but rather a specific time on our calendars. Christians started observing the Sabbath on Sundays after the resurrection of Jesus. They saw the day on which Jesus was resurrected as the most holy day of the week. Therefore, they started celebrating Jesus' resurrection every single week. This led to what we have today as Sunday being the Sabbath in many people's views. Not so long ago, many people were still very strict about observing the Sabbath, and this still applies in some areas and neighborhoods today. For instance, if you live in an estate or sectional title complex, you will quickly learn that your neighbors would complain if you disturb their silence on a Sunday afternoon. This is not the time for you to start up your weed eater or to watch rugby so loudly so that everyone else could hear. It is still a taboo today. In other countries and regions, people are much more relaxed about Sunday being a Sabbath today. A great debate has recently developed amongst Christians about which day should be observed as the Sabbath. Should we revert to the way people in biblical times celebrated the Sabbath? Those who opt for this say that we should celebrate Shabbat on Saturdays. However, we learn from the history of the biblical people that they celebrated Sabbath on Friday evenings and Saturday mornings and afternoons, while the Christians started celebrating Sabbath on Sundays after Jesus' resurrection. So technically, none of them celebrated the Sabbath on a Saturday as a whole. Jesus made it clear that he did not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. This means that he did not nullify the first 5 books of the Old Testament, and that he certainly did not come to abolish the Ten Commandments. To tell the truth, he addresses most of the issues concerning the Ten Commandments in his teachings. To some, it may seem like he did nullify the Sabbath, as he would prove that the beliefs the Pharisees and scribes held onto concerning the Sabbath were wrong. Therefore, many reason that this specific commandment does not exist anymore. Such thinking is not correct, however. When Jesus addressed the Pharisees and scribes regarding the Sabbath laws, he did not do so to nullify the Sabbath. He basically addressed their own man-made rules and laws, which they added to the basic commandment which God gave. Over the years, people wondered what exactly constituted work. Therefore, these clever, learned people, the Pharisees and the scribes, who were the experts in the Old Testament studies and the law of God, devised clever additions which they added to God's law. This, of course, was not the law of God in itself, but man-made laws that God abhorred. These man-made laws put a lot of constraints and bindings on people, whereas God's law was given to offer his people a lot of freedom. A law which gives freedom, you may ask? Yes, that is exactly what God's law did. It was meant to free people. In the ancient Near East, no one ever had a day of rest. In Egypt, where the Israelites were slaves, they never had a day of rest. Now God is telling these people that they must rest, not because He wants to bind them or constrain them, but rather because He wants them to have a day off which they can enjoy, take some time off to properly rest, and to spend time with Him because He loves them more than anyone else. He needed to issue this law, as a lifetime of busyness would not be able to slow these Israelites down. It is like a person who never leaves and never takes leave from work, but he or she is just always there. If you do not force them to take some leave, they will most probably be there every single day of the year. If you do not close the company doors over weekends, they will come into work over weekends as well. Therefore, you have to force them into a healthy habit. Well, try to anyway. Whether they will rest when they are at home is entirely up to them, but at least you are doing all that you can from your side to cultivate a healthy lifestyle for them. The same applied to the Israelites. God had to tell them to take a day off. So, to come back to our pressing question, which day should we take off then? With Jesus' fulfillment of the law and his breaking of the bondage of the man made rules and laws which accompanied God's perfect law, we are no longer bound to a specific day of the week. What matters most is that we have to take a day off to rest. A good day to celebrate or observe the Sabbath for most Christians would be the day on which they attend church. For a pastor, however, another day of the week would suffice. Therefore, no one can accuse a pastor of heading to hell if he or she preaches on a Saturday or Sunday. Just so, no one can tell you that you will go to hell if you do not take a day off during the week. Our salvation lies in Jesus. Our obedience to God's law is the extension of our love towards Him, not something that we need to achieve so that we may go to heaven when we die. However, God gave us this commandment because He loves us and because He knows what is best for us. Therefore, it would be best for you and your relationship with God if you do observe this commandment as God commands you. This commandment has not fallen away, and if you honor it, you will pick the rich fruit thereof in your life. Now, to answer our second question, how do we set the Sabbath day apart as holy? God explains this neatly in the verses to follow. Exodus 20, verse 9. For 6 days you may labor and do all your work. The Net Bible translates this part of the commandment as may. You may labor and do all your work. However, they do admit in their study Bible notes that the original Hebrew actually states this phrase as you will labor. Yet, they feel that the stress of this commandment is on the prohibition of laboring on the Sabbath day. Therefore, they have translated it as you may. We should remember that the Bible always interprets itself and that it never contradicts itself. We find a commandment relating to work in one of Paul's epistles. Let us read from 2 Thessalonians 3, verses 10 to 12. For even when we were with you, we used to give you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, neither should he eat. For we hear that some among you are living an undisciplined life, not doing their own work, but meddling in the work of others. Now such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to work quietly and so provide their own food to eat. Although God commands His people to rest, He does not encourage an undisciplined life, nor does He encourage idleness. Solomon has said the same long before Paul. In Proverbs 19, verses 15 and 24, we read, Laziness brings on a deep sleep, and the idle person will go hungry. The sluggard has plunged his hand into the dish, and he will not even bring it back to his mouth. You shall work is as much part of this commandment as you shall rest is part of it. For if you do not work, then there is no use for you to rest. It is the hard-working person at work who deserves a day off, not the lazy one who never accomplishes anything. It is the hard-working athlete who may take a day off from training, not the couch potato who never does anything to improve their health or lifestyle. The lazy person at work and the couch potato are both in a permanent state of rest. Therefore, they do not deserve a day off, for every day is a day off to them. They will not even notice the difference when they take a day off, because it would not be different from their normal routine. The same applies to us. You have to work so that you may rest. God does not want his people to be mindless wanderers of the earth. We see so many young Christians today who make a habit out of doing absolutely nothing and then use their faith as an excuse for this. There are those who resign their jobs just so that they can spend more time with God. This seems noble, yes, but after a few years of doing nothing, if their excuse is still that they are waiting for God to create the perfect job opportunity for them, then we can almost surely tell that there is something else brooding beneath the surface. This may not always be laziness or slothfulness, but it can be a sign of depression or fear on the person's side who is too scared to move out of their comfort zone into the corporate world again. Just so, the same applies to our relationship with God. All relationships are hard work. Do not let anyone tell you anything else. Some relationships just feel like less work because it is more enjoyable or because the two persons are just more compatible. It may also be because they are more passionate about making the relationship work. This does not mean that it requires less effort from either party. It only means that it does not feel like such hard work. The effort stays the same, for if either party decides to let go and not to focus on their relationship anymore, the relationship will surely suffer. Therefore, God has initiated a foolproof plan to ensure that his relationship with his people is never neglected. He does this by commanding that one day a week should not only be set apart for rest, but also for spending time with him. When we are busy, we cannot pay attention to our relationships as we want to. Therefore, many therapists and counselors prescribe date nights for married couples where they deliberately take the night off from work, cooking, cleaning, the kids' homework, etc., to spend deliberate time with one another, alone, without any distractions. Many couples have testified that this does wonders for their relationship and that they are able to connect with one another on a deeper level. This is because they intentionally make time for one another and put all other distractions aside. God expects the same from us. So, you can see the Sabbath as a date or an important meeting with the King of the universe. It is a day in which you rest from all your busyness so that you can spend quality time with God. This does not necessarily entail you spending all day at church. You can connect with God after the service as well. There are many ways in which you can contemplate God's goodness and bask in His glory. He gives you permission to take a day off if you are willing to work 6 days a week for that one day off. Exodus 20, verse 10. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or your cattle, or the resident foreigner who is in your gates. The first part of this verse trips many people up. When is the seventh day? Is it a Saturday or a Sunday? Traditionally, it used to be a Saturday, but as mentioned earlier, the Sabbath did not entail a Saturday in its fullness. Rather, it was from the Friday evening to the Saturday evening. This is because the next day already started the night before for the Jews. Where does this come from? Do you remember the creation narrative in Genesis 1? Let us look at one of the examples in verses 3 to 5. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good. So God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. There was evening, and there was morning, making the first day. We then see a repeat of these words in the last sentence right until the end of the creation narrative, with the conclusion of verse 31. You will notice here that it does not say that there was morning and evening, the first, second, third day, etc. Rather, it says that there was evening and there was morning, making it the first, second, and third day. Therefore, the Israelites believed from the earliest times that a day starts when the sun goes down, not when the sun rises. For us, a new day starts when the clock strikes 12 at midnight. It did not work this way in biblical times. And, as mentioned earlier, the Sabbath dates have shifted from half of Fridays and Saturdays to the whole of Sundays after the resurrection of Jesus. What matters most today is that you have to take a day off to rest and to spend time with God. Naturally, we also use this time to spend quality time with family. This is needed. But such time should not evolve into a party or drinking spree. It should be spent remembering and thinking about and contemplating God and His goodness for you. You should think of the times when you were a slave to sin and how much you can enjoy freedom now that He has set you free from that bondage. The second part of this commandment tells us that you should not work on the Sabbath. This has led to all kinds of religiosity among many people, especially the Jews. But unfortunately, many Christians have fallen into the same trap as well. We know, however, that people will always devise clever ideas to get around such bondage when things have become too strict for them. When this happens, we see a dead religious way of life, which is lined with licentiousness instead of a true, loving, living relationship with the one and only living God. So, what are you allowed to do on the Sabbath? The word work here refers to your normal day job, that thing that you do every single day. It basically tells you that one day a week you should break from your routine and take the day off. You will not go to hell if you cook a wholesome family lunch for you and your family on your day off. We have already covered this point. But you may feel like you don't want to work on that day or cook on that day and that you want to take the day off from cooking. This does not mean that you should break the bank to go and dine out or that you should eat junk food or takeaways. If you wish to really rest and not to slave behind the stove all day, then you can prepare your meals the day before or invest in something like a slow cooker. It was always so ironic how the community in which I grew up in had all kinds of rules which stipulated that it is a sin to mow your lawn, work in the garden, or even swim on a Sunday, as it is the Lord's Sabbath. However, all of them slaved themselves in the kitchen all Sunday after the church service to prepare for this humongous family meal. To me, it was counteractive and it did not make sense at all. We were even told that it is a sin to read the Sunday newspaper because someone had to print it. It was a sin even to buy the most essential things or to put petrol in your car on a Sunday because that entails that someone has to work. The same applies to eating out at a restaurant or watching sport on a Sunday. Yet there was nothing wrong with popping over to a friend's house for coffee. So you were not allowed to have coffee at a restaurant because someone has to work to make the coffee and to serve you. But what exactly is the difference between that and your friend who has to make the coffee and who has to serve it to you? The friend will most probably even go through more trouble to serve a proper cup of coffee than the waiter would at the restaurant. This work does not mean that you cannot do anything. The Jews tried to qualify this by laying down all kinds of ridiculous rules. Dr. David Guzik highlights some of these in his commentary on Exodus 20, verses 8 to 11. Let us read this together. Ancient rabbis taught that on the Sabbath a man could not carry something in his right hand or in his left hand, across his chest or on his shoulder, but he could carry something with the back of his hand, his foot, his elbow, or in his ear, his hair, or in the hem of his shirt, or in his shoe or sandal. Or on the Sabbath Israelites were forbidden to tie a knot, except when a woman could tie a knot in her girdle. So, if a bucket of water had to be raised from a well, an Israelite could not tie a rope to the bucket, but a woman could tie her girdle to the bucket and pull it up from the well. In observant Jewish homes today, one cannot turn on a light, a stove, or a switch on the Sabbath. It is forbidden to drive a certain distance or to make a telephone call, all carefully regulated by traditions seeking to spell out the law exactly. Jesus came to set things right, and he clearly did not attack the Sabbath day commandment that God gave them, but rather the Jews' additions to God's commandment. This is what was wrong in God's eyes. The main purpose of this commandment is threefold. You shall rest, you shall not make anyone or any one of your animals work, and you shall remember the Lord your God that day. It is a day that you should observe as holy unto God. You are to set it apart. And here, God goes beyond the boundaries of class, race, age, and gender in this commandment, making it even more countercultural. No person, whether man or woman, child or adult, male or female, slave or master, animal or human, foreigner or fellow Israelite, should be forced to work on the Sabbath. All of them deserved equal rest on the Sabbath. There was not one person, no, not even their servants or even their animals, who were allowed to work when they were resting on the Sabbath. All of them had equal rights. Yes, animal rights are not a new thing. It was instituted by God thousands of years ago already. Equality is not a new thing. God made it clear that every person deserved equal rights. This was unheard of in the ancient Near East. But this is exactly what set the Israelites apart from their Gentile neighbors. They were different because they were God's people. We should be different because we are God's people. God is different, and therefore we should imitate him. Exodus 20, verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. God certainly did not need to rest, for he does not sleep or slumber. So why did he rest on the seventh day? To set an example for us to follow. There are many debates about the physical creation of the world by God. Did God create everything that He created in 6 weekdays of 24 hours each, as we know the day to be today? Or did He create in 6 periods of time, which may mean that each day is only a representation of 100 or even thousands of years? The Bible does not tell us the answer to this explicitly. What we do know is that God set an example for us to follow. He did not have to do it, but He is a truly good leader who leads the way by example. Right at the beginning of creation, He set a day apart to rest from His work and to spend time with us. So, why would we not do the same? If He is willing to make time for us, why would we not make time for Him? In this, I am not saying that God is only available on the Sabbath. What I am suggesting is that God loves us so much that He would do what is unnecessary to Him just to show us what He expects of us. He wants us to take a day off and to spend time with Him. I always make the following suggestions when I talk on this topic. Every single day, you have to take time to rest. Even if it is just an hour out of your busy day, take some time off to rest, regather your thoughts, and spend some quality time with God. Taking just an hour out of your day still leaves you with 23 more to do plenty of other things. Every single week, you have to take a day off. Take one day a week and set it apart to rest. Think about what is important to you, do something you enjoy, and spend quality time with God. Every month, you should take a weekend off. You need time to recuperate, especially if you are a very busy person. Take an entire weekend off and resolve not to touch your study material or books, not to work or do anything that you would usually do. Use this time to spend more quality time with God in prayer and extra Bible reading. Then once a year, you should take at least 1 week off. If you take your work and your job serious, then you will take your rest serious as well. Burning yourself out is not going to be beneficial to you, your colleagues, or your employer. Take time off to get some proper rest and make use of every possible opportunity to spend time with God. This is a good time to cultivate new habits of regular Bible reading and prayer times with God. It is much needed. Fact is, take some time off. God knows that we need rest. He did not issue any of the 10 Commandments because He wanted to pull a prank on us. He knows what we need, and He commands this because He wants His people to be healthy. Burnout is a real danger today, affecting more and more people. The World Health Organization has qualified it as a real disorder, one which affects thousands of people and which hits people really hard. Plus, unlike any other disease, burnout takes months to overcome. You may be brave to work overtime and never switch off. However, somewhere along the line, this kind of reckless behavior is going to catch up with you. If you are a hard worker, then you certainly deserve 1 day a week off. The rest of the time outs I have listed today is only for your own benefit. Take time off and use it to glorify God. Let us sing a song to remind us that God never changes and that He never fails us.
My God, you never fail, you never have, you never will. Jesus, you never fail, your promise stands forever. Hey. never-changing one. You're my hope and future. Oh, and I know the plans you have for me. Oh, so I'm letting go, leaning in to your everlasting love. My God, you never have, you never will. Oh, Jesus, you never fail. Your promise stands forever. Standing on your promise, standing on your promise, standing on your promise stands forever. Standing on your promise, standing on your promise, standing on your promise stands forever. Standing on your promise, standing on your promise, standing on your promise, say I'm standing, standing on your promise, standing on your promise, your promise, stands forever. You say, my God, you never fail, you never have, you never will. Jesus, you never fail, your promise stands forever. My God, you never fail, you never have, you never will. Jesus, you never fail, your promise stands forever. Oh my God, you never fail. My God, you never fail. Oh, you never have, you never will. Oh, you never have, you never will. Psalm 37 says, I was young and now I'm old. David said, I was young and now I'm old. And never have I seen the righteous forsaken. Never have I seen the righteous forsaken. Oh God, you never fail. Yeah. I've lived to see your goodness. Your goodness just gets better. I'm standing on your promise. Your promise stands forever. I've lived to see your goodness. Your goodness just gets better. I'm standing on your promise. Say I'm loved. Oh, I'm loved and I've seen your goodness. Your goodness just gets. So I'm standing. Yeah.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and give you peace. May God be with you in the week to come, and may he give you rest, and may you rest in him as well. In Jesus' name I pray this over you. Amen. Thank you for joining us this morning. Please remember to join us again next week on Zoom. We are looking forward to seeing you then. Have a very blessed week. Bye bye.